Welcome to Heartfelt Revenge Stories. Marcus Chun stood at his kitchen window, watching his wife Elena through the glass as she lingered in their backyard, her arms wrapped tight around herself even though it was the middle of August. The thermometer read 87 degrees, but there she was, wearing another turtleneck sweater. The fifth one this week if he'd counted correctly. And Marcus always counted. As a documentary filmmaker, noticing patterns was practically embedded in his DNA. It's what had earned him 2 regional Emmys and a solid reputation for digging up uncomfortable truths that most people preferred to keep buried. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared him for the moment he'd have to turn that same investigative lens on his own marriage. On his own wife. Please subscribe and like this video and listen to my story till the end. Let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. Because what I'm about to tell you, it started small. So small I almost missed it. It began with little things. A locked bathroom door that was never locked before. Phone calls Elena would take in the garage, her voice dropping to a whisper the moment she heard his footsteps. Then came these turtlenecks in 90-degree weather. Silk scarves wrapped around her throat. High-collared blouses buttoned all the way up even at home. Last Tuesday Marcus had glimpsed something that made his blood run cold. Bruises. Purple and yellow, shaped exactly like fingerprints, dotting her collarbone before she'd yanked her shirt up with hands that wouldn't stop trembling. Allergic reaction, she'd said, her voice as brittle as dried leaves. New laundry detergent. Marcus had checked later that night while she slept. Same Tide Pods they'd been using for 3 years. Same. Exactly. Brand. That same night, Marcus lay awake beside Elena in their bed, staring at the ceiling while his mind raced. Next to him, she thrashed against the sheets, mumbling something he couldn't make out at first. Then her voice cut through the darkness, clear and desperate. Please stop. Her face twisted in anguish even in sleep. I can't do this anymore. He reached for her instinctively, wanting to comfort her, but she jerked away from his touch like it burned. A sob caught in her throat, raw and broken, and Marcus felt something inside his chest crack wide open. The next morning, after Elena left for her job at Richardson & Partners Consulting, Marcus made a decision. He waited until her car disappeared around the corner. He wasn't proud of what he was about to do. The husband in him felt sick at the violation of trust. But the journalist in him, that part of him that had spent 15 years uncovering hidden truths, knew something was profoundly, terribly wrong. And the husband in him needed to know what it was before it destroyed them both. Her dresser drawer stuck slightly when he pulled it open. It always did. Behind the cashmere sweaters he'd given her last Christmas, his fingers found something that didn't belong. A cheap flip phone, the disposable kind you could buy with cash at any gas station. The kind people used when they didn't want to be traced. His hand steadied as he flipped it open. One contact was saved. Just one letter. V. The message history made his stomach drop through the floor. Tonight. 8 p.m. The usual place. You look good today. Wear the blue dress. Tomorrow. Don't test me again. Marcus sat on the edge of their bed, the phone cold and foreign in his palm. The usual place. He scrolled through checking timestamps. Every Tuesday and Thursday for the past 6 weeks. Always the same times. Always the same commanding tone. His wife wasn't having an affair. This realization hit him like a physical blow. This was something else entirely. Something so much worse. These messages, they didn't read like love notes or passionate exchanges. They read like orders. Like commands. And Elena, his brilliant, fierce Elena who'd argued her way through law school and made junior partner before she turned 30, was obeying them. What could make a woman that strong bend like this? What kind of hold did this person have on her? Marcus photographed every single message with shaking hands, then returned the phone exactly as he'd found it, making sure the sweaters were positioned just right. Back in his home office, he spread cameras and audio equipment across his desk. As a filmmaker, he knew how to find stories hiding in plain sight. But this required a different approach entirely. A more dangerous one. He pulled up the Richardson & Partners website on his laptop. There, smiling from the staff page, was Vincent Richardson, senior partner. I am 46 years old. Stanford MBA. The firm's golden boy with a corner office and a reputation for landing impossible clients, and even more impossible deals. Marcus zoomed in on the photograph. Square jaw, expensive tailored suit, and a smile that never ever reached his eyes. The kind of smile that made Marcus's skin crawl. He cross-referenced the text with Elena's calendar entries. Every Tuesday and Thursday, she had client meetings scheduled that ran late into the evening. No client names listed. No locations specified. Just block time that swallowed hours of her life. Marcus made a phone call to Simon Hayes, an old friend from his journalism days who transitioned into private investigation. They met for coffee the next morning, and Marcus kept his story vague. Just research for a documentary about workplace dynamics and corporate culture, he said. Vincent Richardson. Simon whistled low when Marcus mentioned the name. Now that's a shark if I've ever seen one. We get asked to look into him maybe twice a year. Nothing ever sticks, though. Nothing. What kind of stuff are we talking about? Simon leaned in closer. Sexual harassment claims that vanish into thin air. NDAs that shut people up permanently. Here's the thing, his father is Albert Preston. Owns half the commercial real estate in this city. Different last name because Richardson married his mother for her family money and kept her surname. Smart move, actually. Vincent learned early that money makes problems disappear like they never existed. Marcus felt something cold and heavy settle in his chest, making it hard to breathe. What about evidence? He asked. If someone wanted to actually prove something against him, what would they need? Simon studied him for a long moment, his eyes narrowing. You'd need a video. Audio. Something concrete he couldn't deny or pay his way out of. And you'd need to be smart about it, Marcus. Careful. Because guys like that, they don't go down easy. And they take everyone around them down when they fall. That evening, Marcus told Elena he had a last-minute scouting trip for a new documentary project. She'd looked almost relieved when he said it, and that hurt more than if she'd looked suspicious. At 7:30 p.m., Marcus sat in his car 3 blocks from the Riverside Hotel, watching the entrance through his camera lens. The burner phone's GPS history had shown this exact location every Tuesday and Thursday for weeks. He'd called ahead earlier, posing as a potential business client, and learned that Vincent Richardson kept a suite on permanent retainer. For business meetings, the concierge had said. Marcus had brought 3 cameras, one hidden in his bag designed to look like an external battery pack, one embedded in a pair of prototype smart glasses a tech startup had sent him to review, and one mounted in his car, trained steadily on the hotel entrance. At 7:52 p.m., Elena's car pulled into the underground garage. Marcus's jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. She wore the blue dress. She walked like someone heading toward their own execution, shoulders hunched forward, each step slow and reluctant. 8 minutes later, a black Mercedes pulled up to the entrance. Vincent Richardson stepped out, laughing into his phone like he didn't have a care in the world. He ended the call and strode inside like he owned the place, which Marcus would learn later he essentially did. His father's company owned the entire building. Marcus waited 15 agonizing minutes, then entered the hotel himself. Has someone you loved ever hidden something from you? Something that changed everything once you found out? Drop a comment and let me know, because what Marcus discovered next would shatter his entire world. Stay with me. The lobby was upscale but not heavily monitored. Marcus had scouted it the day before, carefully noting every camera's blind spot, every angle, every weakness in their security setup. He took the stairs to the 3rd floor where Richardson's suite was located. He couldn't get inside. The door was locked biometric security, but he didn't need to get inside. During a documentary he'd filmed about architectural design, Marcus had learned something fascinating about building acoustics. Old hotels like this one had generous ventilation systems with return grates that carried sound beautifully. He placed his phone set to record against the grate outside Suite 312, and then he heard it. Elena's voice shaking with fear. Vincent, please. I did what you asked. The Reynolds contract is yours. That's everything you wanted. That's not enough, Elena. Vincent's voice was smooth, casual, like they were discussing the weather. You're a smart woman. You know exactly how this works. I gave you that promotion. I made you junior partner. That comes with certain expectations, certain obligations. This isn't what we agreed to. A cold laugh. We didn't agree to anything, sweetheart. I own you. You signed the Henderson deal without proper disclosure. That's a felony. Securities fraud. I have the emails, your digital signature on documents you never should have touched. One word from me and you lose everything. Your career. Your marriage to that documentary filmmaker husband of yours. Your freedom. Prison time, Elena. Is that what you want? Silence. Then soft crying that made Marcus want to put his fist through the wall. Now, Vincent continued, his voice hardening, let's not waste any more time. I have another appointment at 10. Marcus's hand trembled as he held the phone, but he kept recording. This wasn't an affair. This was extortion, sexual coercion, and Vincent had leverage, real or fabricated, over a supposed crime that could destroy Elena's entire life. He waited another 30 minutes, recorded enough to make him physically sick, then left the hotel. In his car, he didn't allow himself to break. Not yet. He drove straight to Simon's office, even though it was nearly 10 p.m. I need everything you have on Vincent Richardson, Marcus said, sliding an encrypted drive across Simon's desk. And I need to know about the Henderson deal at Richardson and Partners. Someone there set my wife up. Framed her. Simon's expression shifted from confusion to understanding to barely controlled anger, as Marcus explained. How deep are you willing to go with this? Simon asked quietly. As deep as it takes. I don't care what it costs me. Over the next week, Marcus became someone he barely recognized. A ghost haunting his own life. He smiled at Elena over breakfast, kissed her goodbye like nothing was wrong, and spent his days building a case that could take down a monster. Simon delivered information that made the picture devastatingly clear. The Henderson deal was real. A $15 million contract between tech startup Henderson Industries and a major pharmaceutical company. Elena had been the lead attorney, handling all the paperwork. But the documents Simon uncovered told a much darker story. Someone had backdated disclosure forms, altered filing timestamps. The digital signature was Elena's, but the metadata revealed the documents had been modified from Vincent Richardson's computer. After Elena had signed the legitimate documents, he'd framed her, set her up perfectly, then used that manufactured crime to control her like a puppet. There's more, Simon said, spreading photographs across the conference table in his office. Vincent has done this before. Jessica Park, paralegal, 2019. Forced her out with an NDA and a settlement. Rachel Foster, associate, 2021. Same pattern. Both claimed coercion. Both disappeared quietly with sealed settlements. Marcus studied the faces of these young women. Talented. Ambitious. Destroyed. His stepbrother knows, Simon added. Thomas Page. He's Vincent's VP at the firm, but he absolutely hates his guts. Their parents married when they were teenagers. Thomas has seen what Vincent does. He's tried reporting it internally multiple times, but Albert Preston, Vincent's father, buries everything. Every single complaint. Can we get Thomas to talk? To help us? Maybe. If you give him the right cover. The right protection. Marcus reached out to Thomas through a mutual LinkedIn connection, framing it as research for a documentary on corporate ethics and accountability. They met at a diner 40 miles outside the city, far from anyone who might recognize them. Thomas Page was 40 years old with exhausted eyes, and the slumped posture of someone carrying unbearable weight for too long. You're Elena Galvin's husband, he said. It wasn't a question. Marcus didn't deny it. She's a good person, Thomas said quietly, staring into his coffee. She didn't deserve any of this. None of them did. Tell me everything. Thomas talked for 2 hours straight. About how Vincent had learned manipulation from his father, who'd built a real estate empire by systematically destroying anyone who got in his way. How Vincent saw people as tools, objects to be used and discarded. How he'd been protected his entire life by money and connections that ran deeper than anyone realized. He keeps recordings, Thomas said, his voice dropping even lower. Insurance, he calls it. Video, audio, documents. Everything he uses to control people. He stores all of it in a safe in his office. Top floor corner suite. Biometric lock. He thinks it makes him untouchable. Marcus leaned back in the booth. You're willing to help us get access to that. I have a daughter, Thomas said, and his voice cracked. She's starting law school next year. I can't let her enter a world where men like Vincent go unpunished, where they just keep getting away with it over and over. Someone has to stop him. I should have done it years ago. The plan took shape over 72 intense hours. Marcus called in every favor he'd accumulated in 15 years of documentary filmmaking. Tech experts who owed him. Security consultants he'd helped on previous projects. Even David Martinez, a retired police detective who owed Marcus for a story that had cleared his son's name in a corruption scandal. The strategy was elegant in its simplicity, but terrifying in its execution. They couldn't just expose Vincent through leaked recordings. He'd lawyer up immediately. His father would pay off anyone necessary. And Elena would become collateral damage, her career destroyed whether Vincent went down or not. No, they needed Vincent to confess on camera, in a way that couldn't be denied, bought off, or buried. Marcus would wear a wire to their scheduled interview. But first, he needed Vincent to believe he had the upper hand, that he was still completely in control. Thursday afternoon, Marcus sent Vincent an email from his professional account. Subject: Documentary Opportunity Rising Business Leaders. Mr. Richardson, I'm producing a documentary on successful business leaders under 45 who are reshaping corporate America. Your name came highly recommended by several industry sources. Would you be interested in an on-camera interview to discuss your leadership philosophy and success strategies? Vincent's ego was as predictable as sunrise. He responded within an hour, suggesting they meet at his office the following Tuesday. Meanwhile, Thomas provided building access codes and security protocols. Marcus's tech team, led by Rafael Santos, a security specialist who specialized in exposing corporate fraud, mapped the entire office layout. They identified the safe's exact location, the surveillance system's blind spots, and Vincent's daily routine down to the minute. Elena knew nothing about any of it. Marcus couldn't risk her reacting in a way that might tip Vincent off. He hated lying to her with every fiber of his being. But every time he saw new bruises fading on her skin, or caught her staring into space with dead eyes, his resolve hardened into something unbreakable. Sunday night, Elena broke down completely. Marcus found her in their bathroom, mascara running in black rivers down her face, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice shattered. "Marcus, I'm so sorry." He held her, his own heart breaking into pieces. "Whatever it is, whatever happened, we'll fix it together. I promise you. You don't understand what I've done. The trouble I'm in." He tilted her chin up, forcing her to meet his eyes. "Whatever happened, whatever you think you did, I love you. And I'm going to make this right. I swear to you." She searched his face desperately, wanting so badly to believe him. "You can't. He's too powerful. Too connected. Nobody can touch him. Nobody's too powerful for the truth, Elena. Trust me. Have you ever had to protect someone you love from a threat they couldn't see coming? What would you do if you discovered something like this?" The next part will show you exactly how far Marcus was willing to go. You won't believe what happens. Tuesday arrived with the kind of cruel sunshine that felt like mockery. Marcus met his team at 6 a.m. in a rented office space 3 blocks from Richardson and Partners. The room was filled with cameras, microphones, and laptops spread across every available surface. Rafael ran final checks on all the equipment, his fingers flying over keyboards. "You're wired in 6 different places," he explained, showing Marcus each hidden device. "Even if he finds one, we've got 5 backups running simultaneously. Audio is streaming to 3 separate servers in real time. One of them is Simon's, and he's offsite in a completely different location. Video feeds directly to the cloud. There's no way he can stop this once it starts. No way." Thomas had called in sick that morning, establishing his alibi. His role would be crucial for what came next, but he needed to be nowhere near the building when everything went down. At 10 a.m., Marcus entered Richardson and Partners. The receptionist, Nicole Sanders, smiled professionally and directed him to the 14th floor with the kind of polished courtesy that cost money to train. The corner office was exactly as Thomas had described. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Modern art is worth more than most people's houses. A mahogany desk that probably cost more than Marcus's car. Vincent Richardson stood and extended his hand, his smile bright and empty. Mr. Chan, what a pleasure. Marcus shook it, channeling every ounce of professionalism he possessed. His heart hammered against his ribs, but his hand stayed steady. Thank you for agreeing to this interview, Mr. Richardson. They went through the motions like a dance. Marcus set up a camera, a real one this time, for authenticity. He asked softball questions about Vincent's career trajectory, his business philosophy, his meteoric rise to success. Vincent preened exactly as Marcus had predicted, loving every second of the attention. 30 minutes in, Marcus shifted gears. Let's talk about corporate culture and management style. How do you handle difficult employees? The ones who push back. Everyone's manageable with the right incentive structure, Vincent said smoothly. It's just about understanding what motivates people. Interesting approach. Can you elaborate on that? Vincent leaned back in his leather chair, supremely confident. Look, business is fundamentally about leverage. You find what people need. Security, money, protection from consequences. And you provide it. In return, they deliver results. Simple economics. What if they resist? What if they try to push back against that leverage? Vincent's smile didn't waver for a second. Then you remind them exactly what they have to lose. It's not personal, Mr. Chan. It's just effective leadership. Marcus paused, letting the moment breathe. Like with Elena Galvin. The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Vincent's expression calcified into something cold and dangerous. Excuse me. My wife, Marcus said calmly. Elena Galvin. You've been coercing her for 2 months using fabricated evidence of a crime that you committed and framed her for. Vincent stood slowly, his hands flat on the desk. This interview is over. Get out of my office. No, Marcus said, his voice steady as stone. Actually, it's just beginning. He pulled out his phone and played the audio recording from the hotel. Elena's terrified voice filled the office. Please, I did what you asked. Vincent's response, cold and commanding. I own you. Vincent lunged across the desk for the phone. Marcus dodged smoothly, and the office door burst open right on cue. Simon entered with David Martinez and 2 actual FBI agents. Special Agents Caroline Foster and Marcus Rodriguez. Vincent Richardson, Agent Foster said, her voice crisp and official. You're under arrest for extortion, sexual coercion, wire fraud, and securities fraud. You can't do this. Vincent's face went from white to purple. This is entrapment. This whole thing is entrapment. No, Marcus said quietly. This is documentation. Everything you've done to my wife. To Jessica Park. To Rachel Foster. To probably a dozen other women whose lives you destroyed. It's all recorded now. All of it. And before you call your father, Simon added with grim satisfaction, you should know that Thomas has already provided the FBI with copies of everything in your safe. All those insurance files you kept? They're evidence now. Against you. Vincent's face went from purple to a sickly gray. You destroyed me, he whispered. No, Marcus said. You destroyed yourself. I just made sure everyone could finally see it. As they led Vincent away in handcuffs, his expensive suit rumpled and his perfect hair disheveled, Marcus felt no triumph. No satisfaction. Just a bone-deep, tired relief that made his knees weak. The fallout was absolutely spectacular. Vincent's secret recordings didn't just implicate him. They revealed his father, Albert Preston, had been involved in decades of corporate manipulation, bribery, and intimidation. The FBI investigation expanded like a shockwave, touching dozens of businesses and public officials. Richardson and partners collapsed within 3 weeks. The firm's clients fled like rats from a sinking ship. Jessica Park and Rachel Foster came forward publicly, their NDAs invalidated due to the criminal conduct. 4 other women followed, each with stories that made Marcus sick to hear. Elena's fabricated crime was proven false through forensic analysis. Computer experts showed exactly how Vincent had altered the Henderson deal documents using administrative access, creating a perfect frame that would have sent her to prison if he'd ever chosen to use it. Thomas Page took over what remained of the legitimate business operations, restructuring everything with actual ethics and accountability. His first major decision was hiring Elena as his senior legal counsel. 3 months later, Marcus sat in his home office, editing the final cut of his documentary. Not the fake one about corporate leadership. The real one. The story of Vincent Richardson's downfall, told through the voices of the women who'd survived him and found the courage to speak. Elena entered with 2 mugs of coffee, steam curling in the afternoon light. The turtlenecks were gone. The locked doors were gone. The bruises had faded completely, leaving only smooth skin. "You doing okay?" she asked, setting his coffee down gently. "Yeah." He pulled her onto his lap, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair. "We good? Are we really good?" She kissed him softly, and he could taste her smile. "We're good. Better than good, actually." She paused, her expression shifting. "The prosecutor called earlier. Vincent's trial date is set. 23 counts total. They're expecting a 15-year minimum sentence. And his father? Facing charges in 3 different states. The whole empire's crumbling. All those untouchable connections? Turns out they weren't so untouchable after all." Marcus nodded slowly. Justice wasn't just about punishment. It was about making absolutely sure this could never happen again. The documentary would air nationally next month. The women would tell their stories in their own words. And men like Vincent Richardson would learn that eventually, always, the truth catches up. His phone buzzed. A text from Thomas. "Board meeting just approved the Elena Galvin Scholarship for Women in Law. First recipient starts next fall. Full ride." Marcus showed Elena the message. She smiled, tears gathering in her eyes and spilling over. "How did you know?" she whispered. "That day when I broke down, when you said we'd fix it. How did you know we actually could?" "Because I know you," Marcus said simply. "And I know that sometimes the only way to beat monsters is to drag them into the light where everyone can see them for what they really are." He paused, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Plus, I'm kind of a badass investigative filmmaker." She laughed. The first real genuine laugh he'd heard from her in months. The sound filled his chest with warmth. "Kind of." She raised an eyebrow. "Definitely. Completely. Undeniably badass." She kissed him again, deeper this time, and Marcus felt something settle in his soul. What would you have done in Marcus's position? Would you have had the courage to take on someone that powerful? Tell me in the comments. Because this story isn't quite over yet. There's one more part that will show you the real aftermath of everything that happened. Stay with me. Outside the window, the sun was setting over the city, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and gold. Somewhere across town, Vincent Richardson sat in a cell, his expensive suits traded for prison orange. His victims were slowly, painfully rebuilding their lives. And Marcus Chun had done what he did best, told a story that actually mattered. The documentary premiered 4 weeks later on a major streaming platform. Marcus had titled it The Usual Place, after those chilling text messages that had started everything. Within 24 hours, it had been viewed over 2 million times. Within a week, it sparked a nationwide conversation about corporate abuse and the systems that enabled men like Vincent to operate with impunity for so long. Elena sat beside Marcus during the premiere screening, holding his hand so tightly his fingers went numb. When her face appeared on screen, telling her story with a steady voice that had taken months of therapy to find, he felt her tremble. "You don't have to watch," he whispered. "Yes, I do," she said firmly. "We all do." Jessica Park spoke about the 2 years of therapy it took her to feel safe again. Rachel Foster described losing her career, her confidence, her sense of self-worth. Each woman's story was different in the details, but heartbreakingly similar in the pattern. Vincent had used the same tactics, the same manipulation, the same exploitation of power dynamics over and over again. "The thing that haunts me most," Elena said on screen, her voice quiet but strong, "isn't what he did. It's how long he got away with it. How many people knew and did nothing. How the system protected him at every turn." The documentary didn't just expose Vincent. It examined the entire ecosystem that had enabled him. The HR departments that ignored complaints. The board members who looked the other way. The legal teams that crafted NDAs designed to silence victims. The father who used his wealth and influence to bury every scandal. Marcus had interviewed Thomas at length. His stepbrother's testimony provided an insider's view that was devastating in its honesty. "I've lived with guilt for 5 years," Thomas said on camera, his face drawn. "Every time Vincent targeted someone new, I told myself I tried to stop it, that I'd reported it internally, that there was nothing more I could do. But that was a lie I told myself so I could sleep at night. There's always more you can do. Always. And I should have done it sooner." The documentary ended with all 6 women together, sitting in Elena's living room, talking about healing and justice and the long road ahead. "We're not victims anymore," Jessica said. "We're survivors. And more than that, we're fighters." When the credits rolled, the theater erupted in applause. Marcus felt tears on his face and didn't bother to wipe them away. Elena was crying too, but she was smiling through it. The legal proceedings moved forward with surprising speed. Vincent's lawyers tried every trick they knew: motions to suppress evidence, claims of entrapment, attacks on the credibility of witnesses. Nothing worked. The evidence was overwhelming, and for once money couldn't make it disappear. 8 months after his arrest, Vincent Richardson was convicted on all 23 counts. The judge sentenced him to 18 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole for at least 12. "Your actions," the judge said, her voice cutting through the courtroom, "represent a systematic abuse of power that devastated multiple lives. You showed no remorse, no recognition of the harm you caused. This sentence reflects the severity of your crimes and the need to protect society from predators who use their positions to exploit others." Vincent's face remained blank as they led him away. No emotion, no acknowledgement. Even at the end, he couldn't admit what he'd done. His father, Albert Preston, faced his own reckoning. Federal prosecutors built cases in 3 states for bribery, witness tampering, and obstruction of justice. The real estate empire that had seemed invincible crumbled under the weight of revealed corruption. Properties were seized, assets frozen. The Preston name, once synonymous with power and success, became a cautionary tale. Thomas restructured what remained of the legitimate business operations into something smaller but ethical. The Elena Galvin Scholarship wasn't his only initiative. He established a comprehensive ethics training program, an independent oversight board, and a fund to support the legal expenses of anyone who came forward with harassment or abuse allegations. "We can't undo what happened," Thomas said at a press conference, "but we can make damn sure it never happens again under our watch." Elena threw herself into her new role as senior counsel with an intensity that sometimes worried Marcus. She worked 12-hour days, overhauling policies, training staff, building systems designed to protect employees rather than executives. "I need to do this," she told Marcus when he gently suggested she slow down. "Every time I think about how scared I was, how helpless I felt, I remember there are other people feeling that way right now in offices all over this city. If I can change even a little piece of that system, it's worth it." Marcus understood. They were both channeling their trauma into something productive. His documentary had sparked conversations that led to actual legislative changes. 3 states introduced new laws strengthening workplace protections and limiting the use of NDAs in harassment cases. The hate mail started about 2 months after the documentary aired. Anonymous emails calling Elena a liar, a gold digger, someone who destroyed an innocent man's life. Marcus wanted to shield her from it, but she insisted on reading every message. "Let them hate," she said calmly. "Their words can't hurt me anymore. Not after what I've survived." But some nights, Marcus would wake up to find her side of the bed empty. He'd discover her in the living room, staring out at the city lights, her arms wrapped around herself the way she used to in the backyard. "Bad dreams?" he'd ask, even though he already knew the answer. "Sometimes I dream he's still out there," she'd admit quietly. "That it's all starting over again. That phone with the messages from V. The threats. The fear." Marcus would hold her until the shaking stopped. "He's gone. He can't hurt you anymore. He can't hurt anyone anymore." "I know. Logically, I know that. But trauma doesn't care about logic, does it?" They both started therapy, separately and together. Dr. Miriam Foster specialized in trauma recovery, and she helped them understand that healing wasn't linear. There would be good days and bad days, setbacks and breakthroughs. "What Vincent took from you," Dr. Foster explained during one session, "wasn't just your sense of safety. He took your ability to trust your own judgment. Elena, you spent months believing you'd committed a crime. That confusion between reality and manipulation, that's a deep wound. It takes time. Elena nodded, tears streaming down her face. I feel so stupid. For believing him. For not seeing through it sooner. You're not stupid, Marcus said fiercely, grabbing her hand. You're a victim of a master manipulator who'd been perfecting his techniques for years. This wasn't your fault. None of it was ever your fault. Have you ever blamed yourself for something that wasn't your fault? For trusting someone who didn't deserve it? You're not alone in that feeling. Tell me in the comments. And if you've dealt with something similar, share your story. You're not alone. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life. Slowly, painfully, they rebuilt their lives. Elena's nightmares became less frequent. Marcus stopped checking her phone obsessively, stopped looking for signs that something was wrong. They learned to be present with each other again, to laugh without that shadow of fear hanging over everything. A year after the trial, they took their first real vacation in forever. 2 weeks in Ireland, wandering through green hills and ancient ruins, deliberately leaving their phones in the hotel room. I feel like I can breathe again, Elena said one afternoon, standing on a cliff overlooking the ocean. The wind whipped her hair around her face, and she looked more alive than Marcus had seen her in years. Like I'm finally myself again. You were always yourself, Marcus said. You just couldn't see it for a while. She turned to him, eyes shining. I couldn't have survived this without you. You know that, right? When I was drowning, you threw me a lifeline. You fought for me when I couldn't fight for myself. That's what love is, he said simply. Showing up. Fighting. Not giving up even when it seems impossible. They renewed their vows on that cliff in Ireland, just the two of them and a local priest who happened to be walking by. No fancy ceremony. No guests. Just promises spoken into the wind and sealed with a kiss that tasted like salt air and new beginnings. When they returned home, Marcus discovered that his documentary had been nominated for an Emmy. Not just any Emmy, but the one for Outstanding Investigative Journalism. The ceremony was 3 months away. Elena insisted on buying a new dress for the occasion. Something bold and bright. The exact opposite of those turtlenecks she'd hidden in for so long. I want everyone to see me, she said, trying on a stunning red gown that made her look like fire come to life. No more hiding. No more shame. This is me. Survivor. Fighter. Free. The night of the Emmy ceremony, Marcus was a nervous wreck. Elena had to tie his bow tie 3 times because his hands wouldn't stop shaking. You're going to win, she said confidently. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Because your documentary didn't just expose one monster. It started a movement. That matters more than any award ever could. She was right about the win. When they announced The Usual Place as the winner, Marcus stood on shaking legs. Elena kissed him hard, her lipstick leaving a mark on his cheek that he refused to wipe off. On stage, holding the Emmy that represented thousands of hours of work and pain and determination, Marcus looked out at the crowd of industry professionals and spoke from his heart. This award doesn't belong to me, he said, his voice steady despite the emotions churning inside him. It belongs to Elena Chan, Jessica Park, Rachel Foster, and every woman who found the courage to speak up when the system was designed to keep them silent. It belongs to Thomas Page, who proved that you can choose integrity even when it costs you everything. It belongs to everyone who believes that the truth matters, that justice matters, that survivors deserve to be heard and believed. He paused, looking directly into the camera. If you're in a situation like the one this documentary exposed, please know that you're not alone. There are people who will believe you, who will fight for you, who will help you drag your monster into the light. Don't give up. Don't let them convince you that power is the same as invincibility. It's not. The truth is more powerful. It just sometimes takes longer to win. The applause was deafening. Backstage, Elena threw her arms around him, both of them crying and laughing at the same time. You did it, she whispered. You actually did it. We did it, he corrected. This was never just my fight. It was ours. The documentary's impact continued to ripple outward. Universities used it in their ethics classes. Law schools screened it during orientations. Corporate HR departments studied it to identify warning signs and systemic failures. Marcus received thousands of messages from survivors who'd seen themselves in Elena's story. Women and men who'd been exploited, manipulated, and silenced by people in power. Some were ready to come forward. Others weren't there yet. Marcus responded to every single message personally, offering resources, support, and most importantly, belief. "I see you," he wrote. "I believe you. Your story matters." 2 years after Vincent's conviction, Marcus and Elena were invited to speak at a conference on workplace safety and ethics. They stood together on stage, their hands linked, and told their story to an audience of 500 HR professionals and corporate executives. "The question I get asked most often," Elena said, her voice carrying to the back of the room, "is how I could have been so blind, how I didn't see what was happening to me. But that's exactly how abusers operate. They isolate you. They make you doubt your own perception of reality. They convince you that you're the problem, that you deserve what's happening, that speaking up will only make things worse." She paused, gathering herself. Vincent didn't start with sexual coercion. He started with small favors, compliments, professional opportunities. He built trust, created dependency, and then he weaponized it. "By the time I realized what was happening, I was already trapped. Or at least I thought I was. That's the lie they want you to believe, that you're powerless, that they're untouchable." Marcus picked up the thread. The system is designed to protect powerful people. Indeed, arbitration clauses, legal teams that outspend and outlast victims. It's not an accident. It's intentional. But it can be changed. It must be changed. And that change starts with people in this room making different choices, believing survivors, creating genuine accountability, not just policies on paper, but real consequences for abuse of power. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. Afterward, dozens of people approached them with stories of their own workplaces, their own failures to act, their own determination to do better. One woman, a CEO of a tech startup, waited until everyone else had left. "My company's COO," she said quietly. "I've had 3 complaints about him in the past year. My board told me to handle it quietly, to avoid bad publicity. After hearing your story, I know what I have to do, even if it costs me my job." "It might," Elena said honestly. "But doing the right thing isn't always easy. It's just right." Marcus added, "And you won't be alone. There are lawyers, advocates, journalists who will support you. Don't let them isolate you the way they tried to isolate Elena." 3 months later, that CEO fired her COO and went public with the reasons why. The fallout was brutal. She lost some board members, some investors, some friends. But she also gained credibility, integrity, and a company culture that actually meant something. She sent Marcus and Elena a handwritten note. "You showed me that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite the fear. Thank you for that gift." Marcus kept that note on his desk, next to his Emmy and a photograph of Elena laughing in Ireland, her face tilted toward the sun. Their life settled into a new normal. Not the old normal from before Vincent Richardson. That was gone forever. But something different. Something earned through pain and struggle and refusing to give up. Elena still had bad days. Days when she couldn't get out of bed, when the weight of what she'd survived pressed down too heavily. Marcus learned to recognize those days, to give her space while making sure she knew he was there. And Marcus had his own struggles. The anger that would surge up sometimes when he thought about how close they'd come to losing everything. The guilt that he hadn't seen the signs sooner. The fear that he'd failed to protect her when she needed him most. "You didn't fail me," Elena told him during one particularly hard night. "You saved me. You saw me when I couldn't see myself. You fought for me when I'd given up fighting. That's not failure, Marcus. That's love. That's the truest kind of heroism there is." 5 years after Vincent's conviction, they attended his first parole hearing. He was denied, unanimously and without hesitation. The parole board cited his continued refusal to take responsibility for his actions. As they left the prison, Elena took a deep breath of free air. "I thought I'd feel more when I saw him," she said. "Anger maybe. Or fear. But I just felt nothing. He's nothing. A small, pathetic man who thought power was the same as worth. He was wrong." Marcus pulled her close. "You're free of him. Completely. Finally. We both are." They drove home in comfortable silence, the kind of quiet that comes from truly knowing someone. From having been through hell together and choosing every single day to keep choosing each other. That night, in their backyard where this story began, Elena stood without her arms wrapped around herself. She stood tall and free, facing the stars with her head held high. Marcus watched her through the kitchen window, and this time his heart wasn't breaking. It was full of pride for this incredible woman who'd survived something that should have destroyed her. Full of gratitude that she'd trusted him to help her through it. Full of hope for all the days still ahead of them. She turned and saw him watching. She smiled, and in that smile was everything. Healing, strength, love, survival, victory. The documentary continued to change lives. New survivors found their voices. New laws were passed. New systems were built. Vincent Richardson's name became a cautionary tale, but Elena Chen's name became something else entirely. A symbol of resilience. Of refusing to stay silent. Of fighting back against impossible odds and winning. Not all endings are happy, Marcus thought, remembering the words he'd spoken to himself years ago. But this one was just. This one was earned. This one mattered. And in the end that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.